Information plus application equals transformation.
Hey, everybody. We're talking to Tony Miltenberger today. What an amazing guy. He's an author, an executive coach, veteran podcaster, and a pastor who's turned life's deepest pains into pathways for purpose and leadership. He has some incredible stories from military deployments to building resilient families while overcoming his own personal challenges. He's a great new friend of mine. You don't want to miss this incredible conversation.
Welcome to The Last 10%. Your host, Dallas Burnett, dives into incredible conversations that will inspire you to finish well and finish strong. Listen as guests share their journeys and valuable advice on living in the last 10%. If you are a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone looking to level up, you are in the right place. Remember, you can give 90% effort and make it a long way, but it's finding out how to unlock the last 10% that makes all the difference in your life, your relationships, and your work. Now, here's Dallas.
Welcome. I am Dallas Burnett, sitting in my 1905 Koch brothers barber chair in Thrive Studios. But more importantly, today we have a great guest. Tony Miltenberger is the author of Wisdom in the Wound and founder of Follow to Lead Coaching. He's the host of a podcast with, way more episodes than the last 10%, 400 episodes. That's insane. And he's a dedicated disciple maker who's traveled the world from Army deployments to church consultations, all while being married for over 20 years and having 3 kids. He is here to share how embracing our wounds unlocks the last 10% of leadership potential through faith and vulnerability and practical wisdom. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Dallas, it's so good to be with you. Let's go. I'm fired up. That introduction was straight fire, dude. I love everything about it. Let's get into some trouble. I'm here for all of that.
It's just like an imposter syndrome because I feel like I should just turn over the mic and Thrive and say, hey, you just run this show because you've got such a history in podcasting. This is really fun. And I enjoy being on your show as well. So this was really, really, really a treat.
Dude, when we met on the Follow to Lead podcast, I knew instantly that we were kindred spirits. I love your heart. I love what you do for the market. I love all the things that you've got going through Thrive. And I just can't wait to see where we go today. It's going to be fun. It's going to
be really fun. All right. So we always start the show by giving the listeners a taste of who the guest is. So tell the listeners kind of who you are and how you got to where you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I did not want to do anything that I'm currently doing when I was a kid. So it's not like I was like, I want to grow up and do these things. Nope, that's not true in my case. I enlisted in the Army Reserves right out of high school and immediately knew I would have gone active duty, but I met this girl and she said, I'm not leaving Dayton, Ohio. And I was like, well, looks like I'm not leaving Dayton, Ohio either. We have since been married for, it'll be 23 years this February, and she still keeps me on the right path. Her name is Karen. We have 3 beautiful children, 19, 15, and 13, 2 boys and a princess. The princess is the youngest, of course. When she was born, I pulled the boys aside and I said, hey, whatever you do, protect your sister. Protect your sister. And then she got to be about 8 years old, and I pulled the boys back aside, and I was like, protect yourself. We got warrior princess. So it's awesome.
That's awesome. That's so great. Great.
It's, my greatest joy is being a dad to those 3 and a husband to Karen. And I enlisted in the Army Reserves. I knew the Lord had kind of just put on my heart about some ministry stuff. So I was a chaplain's assistant in the Army. I got back from basic training and really did some sales work and kind of some nonprofit work. And then eventually I ended up at the church and got to do some incredible church work. I was a lead pastor for 7 years. And the church that I was at was having a really hard time deciding what it wanted to be when it grew up. And so one day I got done preaching. I got out of the pulpit and I got a very clear direction from God. He said, you can stay or you can go. It's both going to be hard.
Ooh.
And I was like, well, that's dumb. Like,
I don't like that.
Where's
What is
the
this?
yeah, where's the easy
door
part,
C?
huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see, streets of gold here, and so,
Yes.
that's when I started to begin to lean into consulting, and I was sitting in front of a really inspirational Christian executive who I've known for a long time, and we were talking about what it means to run his business while also staying true to his values and his faith. And he
Mhm.
looked at me and he said, "Tony, why don't you charge me for this?" And I said,
What?
"Mike, I've never charged anyone for this." And he goes, I'm going to tell you what I paid my last coach, my last executive coach." And he shared with me the number, and I was like, "Well, that's a lot more than what like I would just my brain couldn't handle it." He goes, and he said, "The work that you and I are doing together is more valuable to me than that work."
Mm,
And so that
mm.
day I went home and he was like, "I think you should give this a shot and I'll help you."
Well, that's gotta be pretty encouraging. I mean, when you think
I mean,
about this,
only right.
you're sitting
Oh,
there
encouraging.
with somebody, you're not even charging them, you're just out there with your time, you're just helping a friend out, really, in your mind, you're just like, "Man, I'm sitting here, I'm talking to this guy, I'm just trying to help him walk and be a better version of himself," and and then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, bro, this is so good, I just feel guilty if I don't pay you, so would you take a check, and by the way, this is what I paid the last guy," and I'm sitting there thinking, "Dang, yes,
Yay.
yeah."
Yeah,
And
and
I'm gonna
so
help you do this, man. That's awesome. That's incredible.
I created a Google form, and I asked a bunch of questions about what you would do. Would you be open to working with a Christian executive, and what would you want to get out of it? And
Mm,
I just wanted to send
mhm,
it out as a survey. And so I sent it out to my network, and then he sent it out to his network. And so that week, 50 people took the survey. And at the end of the survey, it said, "Would you like to inquire more about Christian coaching?" And
mm.
4 people said yes, and 2 of those signed up as a client that week.
Oh my gosh.
And
My gosh.
now I had, like, the pucker factor was 10 because now I actually had to figure out what I was gonna do with those people.
They don't know what they just signed up for. I don't know what
I
they
don't
just
know what
signed
they
up
signed
for.
up for, right? It's like, "Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
gotta coach these people." But, and the people who listen to this podcast know that the last 10% is
Mm,
the boldness that it takes to actually go and do something like that. It's the
mm,
decision to step out in
mm,
faith and say, "Okay, here I am."
mm.
And you know what? Out of those 2 clients, one of those clients still has me on retainer.
Oh, wow. That's
Two and a
awesome.
half years later now.
Oh, that's great.
So
That's awesome.
I
Very good.
I do not deserve the life I live, and I'm so thankful for all the doors that have been opened to me by so many people, right? That
Mm.
in coaching, we call it an abundance mindset.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
like, I just you
100%.
you just can't outgive the goodness of, the world and God and all the things that whatever it is that you believe in, you can't outgive it. And so being abundance mindset, one of my
Yeah,
core beliefs is generosity. And
yeah.
I just say all the time that I give my best stuff away for free.
That's great. I mean, I love that. And I think that's so true. And I think that people underestimate the power. I was actually sitting when this was early on, Think Move Thrive. I don't even know if I don't even know if I had named it or not. Yeah, well, no, I guess I had. Yeah, I just named it because I had written the Move, the first book, and I was excited about Move. It's just like this. We're going to talk about your book in a second. You're jacked about the book. You got to be. If
Yeah.
you put that much blood, sweat, and tears into something, you get so pumped about it. You want to share it with the world. And I was sitting across the table and I met these guys. Somebody had said, "You need to meet these guys. So they need to they need to read your book." So I had given them sent them a copy of Move before I met them. They were further down the path. They had some big clients they were working with. They were working with a lot of different Chick-fil-A's. And I'm like, man, if I could get in with these guys, you never know. Who knows? And so I sent him the book, and this guy sitting across the table, and this older fellow, his partner goes to the bathroom, and he looks at me, he goes, "I read your book and I love it." I was like, "Oh, well, you've read a lot of books. You train on this stuff." I was like, "I really appreciate you saying that. That means a lot." It's kind of like a guy from inside the
Sure.
industry that's like,
Yeah.
"Dude, this is legit." And I was like, "Yes." And then he looks at me and it was like total deflation of like any kind. I was just like, unbelievable. He looked at me and said, "But you realize, man," he goes, "you really believe this stuff?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "You realize that people don't change. I mean, people don't change. Like your book is titled Move and you're telling people how to be better." He goes, "But that people don't really change. They don't." And I'm sitting there and I just looked at him and I was dumbfounded. I mean, I was literally, I said, wait a minute, and I had to repeat back to him what he said. He's like, yeah, they don't. Most people don't change. And I was like, why are you doing your job? What, what are you doing? Like, what? You are in the wrong business, man.
Sir, I could not disagree more.
Yeah, I mean, and so literally, that's exactly what I said. I said, well, I just don't believe that. I believe something completely different. But to that point, I think people in general sometimes underestimate the value of coaching and development. And you've been doing it for a lot longer
Right.
because you've been in ministry, you've been in the military, and all these things. You've seen had a lot of experiences on that. But I'd love to share, because a lot of our listeners have experienced our coaching system. We have the app. Some of our listeners have experienced our coaching system, and they've implemented that in their organization just because they want to drive coaching further down into an organization. But I would love to hear you just riff on your experience with coaching and some of the development, not specific, but any kind of thing that you could say, you could speak to about some of the wins that you've seen as a coach in that space.
Yeah. So one of the things that I just really believe is that information by itself doesn't really change much. So the key is, and there's a formula, my buddy Justin Gravett, who is with the Navigators, we talk about this often, and we say that information plus application equals transformation.
Yeah.
Right. And I even, information plus application equals transformation. So the problem is, like, I'm really good at consuming information, but where I need help is with application.
Yes.
And so the transformation part is actually just a result of the work of the two together. So I know a lot of the stuff. I have a coach myself, and I know a lot of the stuff that my coach is saying. But what I really need is I need that coach to ask me about it when we meet 2 weeks or a month from now. I need the application part. I need the accountability. I need a little skin in the game. Right. And so that idea, and so, like, one of the things that I love to do with clients that is transformational is values work, for example. So I believe that if you can identify your values, it can change your life. So my core four are faithful, grateful, generous, and movement. Right. So I want to be faithful, grateful, generous, and movement. And the core four values by themselves, they sound really good and they are great, and I can rattle them off. But here's the work that most people don't see is I have a scorecard underneath them.
Nice. And going Ben Franklin on us, man. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And so I know that faithful in my life means I go to the gym 5 times a week. It means that I pray with my wife every night. It means that I am actively participating in a worship community, right? Grateful means that I call my parents at least once a week. Generous is about my tithe and my talent. And I always have one free coaching client, right? Because that's my scorecard. At the end of the year, I want to be able to evaluate without manipulating the answers in my own head if I'm really living out the values that I say I want. Right. And so, like,
100%.
One of the examples of my core four, the last one is movement, right? In the work that I do and in my own life, it's movement. And so every year, I want to try one thing that I've never done before. I just want to try it. Right. And so, like,
I love it.
This year, for the very first time in our life, we're going to South Africa.
Ooh, nice.
We're going there. We're going there with a ministry. We're going to go, and we're going to go on safari while we're there. And we're going to we're going to do those things. Right. So movement, like now I don't know I don't have any, there's no outcomes associated with that. But the reason I can say, yeah, I want to do that is because it's associated with my values.
Yeah.
Right. And so that kind of work, I think the values themselves are good. And most people I know can come up with values, but assigning activities to the values is what equals application and then transformation.
I would say that's a huge challenge, not only for you personally, but you to extrapolate that to your team, because a lot of people walk in, and I see this all the time. You walk in, you see the values on the wall, and they're like, we believe, this, and here's our mission statement. And then you walk one office down. You don't even make it to the end of the hall or the back closet. You don't make it you just walk one office down, and you walk in the door and you say, hey, you walk by those values every day. Can you tell me all 5 values? And they're like, there's this one here. Yeah. Now, let's say they rattle off the values. All right, good job. You've passed them every day for the last 10 years. That is at least that you get score. That's A+ for noticing. But then when you say, okay, tell me how this company demonstrates this value exactly. It's exactly what you just said. It's exactly what is the scorecard under the value. It's how do I know that this is not an aspirational value for you or for the company or the organization, but it's an integrated value.
Yes.
And the integrated value is different than aspirational because you have the scorecard, you keep score. And what a lot of times the companies will do and organizations will do is they'll keep score on the financial scorecard, the balance sheet, the income statement, the profit and loss statement and stuff, but they don't have a really good scorecard on the value scorecard. And they wonder why their culture is in kind of a malaise, or there's no energy behind it, or there's no really definition, or they may have a higher turnover, or they don't really know.
Yep.
They don't know how to promote someone. How do I know if somebody's doing really well or not? I mean, at the end of the day, you as a business, you have to make money, but on the flip side, there's different ways to do that, right? And so I can't agree with you more. And I think that as a leader, listening to you challenge us to create those scorecards personally also extrapolates to your team and organization. So I love that.
One of the things that I say all the time on the podcast, and it's just become a core belief, is that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions. And so,
I like that.
so here's the truth, right? As a leader, no one ever wakes up and says, man, today is the day that I want to ruin my life. I just haven't met anybody that says that, right? Today's the day that I want to sink my business. Right?
Yeah.
But here's what we do is we inadvertently sacrifice the activities that got us to the place in the first place. Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You can take this to every part of your life. You found that husband or wife. What did you do to find her or him? What are you doing to keep her or him? Right. There are disciplines. No one ever wakes up and says, man, I really want to end my marriage today.
Right.
But we stop dating. We stop doing the work that is required. We stop communicating. We stop being vulnerable. Right.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing that happens in our parenting. All of a sudden, if you think about parenting, those younger years, you're attentive, you're engaged, you're involved because you have to be. And then they get to be about 12 or 13 and they're like, oh my gosh, this human is really annoying me. I'm not going to do those things. And then we wonder why they don't come back home with their grandkids.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
it's the disciplines that got you there. And if you don't know what your disciplines are, then you've actually just let the world set your disciplines. Right? Because the world will say you can come in at 8 and leave at 5. Right? Is that what you want? Is that the life that you want? I don't know. Honestly, I don't care. Like, I don't care what your answer is to the question. I just care that you take the time to answer it.
Exactly. Man, I think that's so awesome. And I think that ultimately what you're trying to get to is really defining who you are and what you want. And I think that's just really interesting because I think that most people move through life and it kind of is acted on them and they don't act on it. You know what I mean? And to your point, I would say this, even, when you gave a great example about your marriage, and I think that's so true, is that it is hilarious when you think about it. It's like the amount of effort in early on in the relationship. Can you say that you're actually doing that if you're in the trenches with your spouse and you're like, oh man, we're just grinding each other? Well, like, are you putting that same on this side? And most likely the answer is no. But I think in an organization, this is where this gets tricky and it gets murky. And many times that people overlook it is we had a guest on probably a year ago. And he said, we had this team, we started out, it was like a small team, it was like 5 people, and then it went to 20, and it's, oh man, we're all tight, and we're doing all these things together, and we had this kind of core common values, and we kind of all believed the same thing, we're running the race together, and it's just like awesome tight group of people. And then we grew really fast, and we had like several hundred people. And we were doing the same things the same way that we did it when we were 20 people, and it wasn't working.
Right.
And so what he was saying is that our connections, we were connecting when we were 20 people, but I can't connect with 200, but I wasn't connecting at all, right? Because I was still trying to connect as if I was with 20 people. And so the system changed, or the environment changed, but the system didn't change with it. So the connection is like what you're saying, the discipline of connection. I want to connect with people, and I want to make sure they connect with each other and have clarity on what we believe in our mission vision. But when the environment changed and went from 20 to 200, the systems didn't change with it to maintain that connection and that clarity and those value structures. So I think that's where it gets tricky as a leader, is because not only are you looking at yourself going, hey, what am I doing? And am I putting out that? And am I clear on that, on my discipline?
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I exercise that discipline could change.
That's right. And so one of the things I tell clients all the time, and I love little sticky sayings, is that you have to set a date to evaluate. Right? You have to set a date to evaluate, is this working or is this not working? And sometimes I hear from business owners, they're like, I'm too busy. And I'm like, if you're too busy to evaluate how you're running your business, then your business is actually running you.
Yeah.
And
100%.
so like, you just got to set a date to evaluate. Shut the doors for a day. There's nothing in the world that if you don't have a team of people that can run the business without your presence, then take a Saturday, take a Sunday, whatever it takes. If you don't set a date to evaluate, then it's impossible to be intentional in your response. Right. And one of the things that I just really believe on, and I talk a little about in the book, is this idea that we can be emotionally reactive or we can be intentionally responsive. And as a leader, if we're emotionally reactive, then what we've done is we've allowed the feelings to become the primary driver of the world that we are living in, instead of being intentional in our response, being value-based, being mission and vision driven. And that's the difference.
That's really good. I love it. I love that. And it's accountability. It's just, if you put that date down, when you set a date to evaluate, you're just giving yourself that built-in accountability that everybody needs. That is putting your gym schedule on your calendar.
That's right.
So that you don't overbook, and just saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm carving out time and having that accountability. Well, man, this has been great. I want to get into your book a little bit, because you're doing your world tour right now with the book launch. And I know that there's some valuable information for leaders that are living in the last 10%. And I like the idea when we first connected about your book, because as leaders, sometimes we get into this leadership, mindset where, we're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to kind of be this display perfection to people around us. And sometimes we start telling ourselves that's what we should be and that's who we are. And so it's like this, defense mechanisms, all that stuff. But I thought your book was a really good way to open up some conversation about real life and leaders in the real world, because we all have battle scars. And so I think moving through that and dealing with those is important. So tell us a little bit about, just give us an intro to your book and kind of what inspired you to write it.
Yeah, the book is called Wisdom in the Wound: How Your Greatest Gift is on the Other Side of Your Wound. And this idea comes back to the core belief that the art of conscious leadership. How do you show up in a room? How do you show up as a leader? And one of the things that I began to realize as I did pastoral counseling and executive coaching is that everyone in the world has got something. Right. And so we would call that 100%. Little T trauma, right? You're wounding. It usually happens between the ages of 4 and 12. It's not malicious in intent, but it drastically shapes the way you look at the world. It becomes, I would say, like a lens in which you look at the world. And we all have it, and it's unavoidable. So if you've got kids, let me just go ahead and affirm, you've already wounded your kids. So just
congratulations.
And this is also probably what happened. You probably tried to give them a different wound than what your parents gave you. And so as a result, they look different. Praise God, right? Like, So everybody's wounded. Theologically, we would call it the epistemic consequence of sin, right? The world is broken. Everyone's willing to admit the world is broken. We don't often talk about the consequences of that brokenness. Your wound is that consequence. So what does that mean? It means that oftentimes people bump up against our wounds and it causes us to react emotionally. So let me give you an example. At 4 years old, my parents had unplanned twins. Crazy. They went from man-to-man defense to zone defense, and I went from being the middle child, or the youngest child, to the middle. So nobody's fault. Nobody did it to me. I love my brother and sisters. They're incredible humans. Would not trade them for the world. And also, from 4 years old on, my wound is I felt like I didn't matter. Now, I've talked to my parents about this. I've talked to my kids. Nobody did this to me on purpose. But it became the lens at which I saw the world. And
Mm.
so at 4 years old, I go to the middle child syndrome and I'm in full effect. And my parents are managing this new life with 4 kids. They end up getting divorced. They end up getting remarried. And somewhere along the way, the narrative in my head was, I don't really matter.
Mm.
Now, play that out. I eventually go to high school, join the army, do all this kind of work. And I'm constantly looking for roles where I can show up in people's lives so that I matter. And so here's the deal, right? On the other side of that wound is my greatest gift because we serve a redemptive God and because psychologically we always want to take account for the pain and trauma that we've experienced. And so what am I
Mm.
really good at? I'm really good at seeing people.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so your gift is naturally on the other side of your wound. And here's the deal. There's this tool that I talk about in the book called the emotional intensity scale. On a scale
Ah,
from 1 to 10, your emotional intensity, most people typically run in that 2 to 4 range, right? Emotional intensity 2 to 4 on a normal day. Your 2 to 4 may look different than my 2 to 4, but we all have a normal kind of homeostasis. When somebody
sure.
bumps up against our wound, we have an intensity spike. And so here's the tool. If on a scale from 1 to 10, your emotional intensity spikes above a 6, it's always more about you than it is the other person.
Ah, interesting.
Right. So if we're 100% responsible for how we think, feel, and act, meaning that you have cognitive control over your feelings, thoughts, and actions, then that means it's impossible for someone to actually make us mad. But instead, we have to choose to be mad. And in most cases, we have to own the fact that we're doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just a lot, right? It's a lot. But think about it like this. If I'm driving down I-75, I live in Ohio, it's the worst highway in the world, and somebody cuts me off. They cut me
Mm.
off, they didn't see me, and then I immediately lay on my horn and I tell them that they're number one, and I use all the words that I learned in the Army to convey my displeasure for this moment.
Right.
We've all been there, right? Now,
Absolutely.
here's the question. I already shared with you my values. Does any of that activity actually align with my values? No.
I would say no. Yeah.
No, there's nothing faithful, grateful, generous, or movement about that. Instead, I'm having an emotional reaction because my emotional intensity has been spiked. Now,
Yes.
do I really think in my heart of hearts that guy in front of me did that to me on purpose? Nope.
No.
No, he didn't even
No.
know who I am. But
No.
what happened in that moment is he bumped up against my wound, which is I want to be seen. Guess what?
Yes.
When he doesn't care about my safety, I don't feel very seen, do I?
Right. Right.
And so now the reality is as a conscious leader, I can say this situation isn't really about this car in front of me. It's about my wound that just lives inside of me and it's real.
Yeah, it's almost like it just gets aggravated in that. It just somebody pricks it. And
Yeah,
it's like, all right, here
100%.
we go. And it's just a little bit more sensitive than the rest of you.
And we all have it right now. Now, here's what's crazy is that sensitivity that can go for good activities as much as it can go for negative activities. So
Mm.
here's another example. I've got 2 sons that both play football. They're both linebackers. Let's say one of them intercepts the ball, takes it back to the house, full blown pick six. Love
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
And then I go full blown Midwestern dad on the sideline. Like I'm chest bumping people. I'm high fiving. Let's go. Right? Like I'm going
Right.
nuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In that moment, is that more about me or is it about them? It's about me.
Yeah. Being seen.
Being seen,
Yeah.
because I
Being
did that
seen.
on that field. Those are my
Yeah.
kids.
My boy.
My boy,
run that.
right?
There you go.
And so the deal is that as leaders, we have to know that when our emotions are above a 6, the only thing that we can do that will be healthy is feel our feelings so that we can get below a 6 to make a good decision.
Mm.
So feelings at their core, they're decision points. They're not decision makers. And
I
so
like that.
the greatest leaders in the world have this kind of thing figured out. They've realized that life is not the absence of your wound. Like you're not going to make it go away, Dallas. It's going to be there forever. But instead, they have an intimacy with their wound so that when somebody bumps up against it, it doesn't scare them.
I like how you've painted that picture because it's really defining what like a part of self-awareness is. Like you're pulling out. I love how you're really tying the wound to a leader's self-awareness in that. I mean, because that is incredible, EQ, and if you can recognize it in others and yourself and self-awareness, and what you're describing is just a profound way of understanding yourself better so that you have the ability to respond, like what you were saying earlier. You have the ability to intentionally respond versus emotionally react. And if your emotions are not decision points, but drivers, right? They're
Right.
driving your decision. Like, because you're always asking your question. I guess if you're a competent leader, you're asking when you start feeling when you get the feels, good, bad, or ugly, if it's coming up, you feel your neck getting red and you're like, you feel the beast coming out. Then the question is, are you intentionally responding in a way that is appropriate to the situation, or is your emotions driving you to do something that you typically wouldn't do? Like you were saying, the example in the car when you're driving. I just think that's really important for leaders because this is not an employee or a team member problem versus a leader problem. This is a human problem
Right.
we all deal with this. So it doesn't matter, even if you're an introvert or an extrovert, if you got a lot of energy or if you got a little energy, it's like, it doesn't matter. Everybody's been wounded and we all have these things. And I just think about it in my career. I saw an employee when I was in a part of a startup. When you're saying these things, I'm just like, I'm playing this over my head, because I've had these conversations with my wife. And one of the things I did early on in my leadership career, I was running this venture funded startup and I was at the table with the founder and we're sitting across this board table and we've got all the financiers people around us. And he made this comment about, we need to let this guy go. We just had hired this guy. And I felt like it wasn't just that he made that comment. It was that he was dismissive of the person and their value as an individual. Like he was just like, he really just did not. And at that point, I just felt like the person was treated so unfairly. It was just like, and I mean, I just was like, I'm going to defend the person who can't defend themselves. And I just went into like, we are not, and I mean, and I went from 0 to 60 in way too fast. And had I had more awareness at that point in time, I would have handled that differently. I would have said probably very similar things, but the response would have been less driven by that emotion, and I could have probably articulated it better. And not like the finances were looking at like, whoa, these guys, I don't know. And so then you're in damage control mode. So I'm just looking at that. That's a real life example, just my personal story. Like going back, I may have said the same thing. I believe the same thing. He was not being treated fairly. He should not have been terminated, all that. But the way I handled that was way more emotionally driven than intentionally driven. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and part of the result of that is that people can't hear your message when you're not clear enough with yourself to deliver it well.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And so this matters. This matters in your marriage. This matters in your parenting. This matters in your workplace. This matters in all the places where you should. Anywhere that there are people, this matters, because all of life is just a bunch of broken people bumping up against each other's wounds.
That's exactly right.
One of the things that I kind of assert in the book is that grace is curiosity and empathy, right? Is that if you can have curiosity and empathy, then you can be graceful in the approach that you want to take in working with others, right? As like, man, I wonder what's going on in Dallas's day that caused him to react like that. Or I can't even imagine the pressure that Dallas has. But oftentimes, because my emotional response is so high, I can't have curiosity or empathy. Instead, I just have like this reactiveness. It's like, the whole world's out to get me. And the problem is that emotional reaction will oftentimes just paint an inaccurate picture of reality. And so like, it may feel that way, that the whole world's out to get you, but the truth is no one's even thinking about you, right? Like, it's just like,
totally,
I was like,
totally.
And so as a leader, I want to make an informed decision. John Tyson would say spirit-led, data-informed. I want to make an informed decision that is full of data points that will move the organization forward to what I feel like we're called to do. And in order to do that, I have to take the wounded part of me and I have to be so familiar with it that it doesn't scare me if I have to lead us down a path where something might bump up against it.
You dropped the one line. You were right, man. You got some great one-liners. The grace is curiosity and empathy. That is when you think, I've never heard it put like that. I've never heard grace described like that. And what's fascinating is when you think about curiosity, when I'm curious about something, I'm not judging it. And I'm
Right.
also really not afraid of it. I'm really like, I'm interested. Okay, let me find out more about this. I want to know more. I'm very curious. I'm intrigued. I'm actually, wow. And when you think about when you approach someone as a leader, whether it's a team member, whether it's a coworker, or whether it's your boss, when they disagree with you or when they do something that doesn't make sense, then if you're responding emotionally and you allow that to be, it really takes, you're either judging them or you're afraid or some other, many other things. But those are two big things that you're going to have to deal with. But if you can move past that, and especially like we're talking about in the wound, and evaluate that and say, well, if my emotional response is a little too high, if I step back from a second, you will win so many more times if you can just look at that and say, I'm fascinated to why you think like that. Why do you think like that? Why did you make that decision? Why are we doing that? But if you can do that in a non-judgmental way, it's not going to come across as judgmental because the problem is you might ask the same question. Why do you think like that? Why in the world would you think like that? Versus, oh man, I am so interested. Tell me more. Tell me more about
Tell me more about that.
Right?
Yes.
So it's just a total different, but that is like a walking, it is. It's that takes grace to extend that curiosity to someone. So I love that. I love that idea. It's really good. So let's talk about what you feel like has been your biggest message in this. If you were to give the biggest message from this to a leader, let's say the leader is leading an organization or a team. If you were to say, I'm going to boil this thing down, if you were going to know this book down to one core point, what would you say to communicate to that leader?
I would say this is the greatest leaders in the world know who they are on the positive and the wounded sides. And they don't have judgment around either side. They just acknowledge that both sides exist. And so there's this tendency with a lot of us, I know with me at least, to judge my feelings as if I shouldn't have them. Like, man, Tony, you shouldn't tell people that you get mad at cars on the 75, or you shouldn't. Like, I know that one of the things I struggle with is ego. Like, I've never not struggled with it. It's just part of how I'm wired, right? Like, I want to be seen. And so it's a constant battle. And, Dallas, you've done this multiple times. This whole process of trying to talk to people about your book is basically, it's basically like, hey, will you be my friend so that I can talk about my book? Right? Like, it's so dumb and good. But so here's the thing, right? All of that is true, but my judgment around those feelings doesn't actually serve what I feel like I'm being called to do. And so like, I do feel like when people say no, like they don't know what they're doing or they hurt my feelings. And I do want this to be wildly successful. And I'm not 100% sure what that means. And I'm talking to a lot of people in my world about it, but for me to put judgment around any of those feelings doesn't actually serve the greater good. Instead, I just want to just sit in it and just acknowledge that I am wounded. People do bump up against my wounds. I do have big feelings, and all of that makes me exactly who I am. And
I love that.
I'm thankful for that.
I love that. I love that. And I think that I want to take it one step further in the sense that I would love for you to talk about. So you just kind of summarized that core principle and idea that you're communicating with the book to leaders. I would love to take it one step further because there's a lot of leaders who are wanting to do well and are coaching some of their team members. They're developing them. And some of that's direct and some of it's indirect. But if I'm a leader and I'm sitting down with a team member, what recommendations would you have? Because you're engaging with executives in coaching. You've been in ministry for a long time. You've been in the Army, and you've engaged, whether that's in direct coaching, indirect, or counseling. You've been a part of a lot of people's lives and seen them develop and change. And so what advice would you give to a leader if they wanted to help walk with someone and help them develop a greater level of awareness about their wounding? How would you recommend they do that?
This is probably not surprising to anyone who's done any reading about leadership stuff, but the truth is you have to walk alongside them in the journey, and so that means you
Mm.
have to go first, right?
Mm.
There are a lot
Okay.
of situations in leadership where you should go last, and I love that book, Leaders Eat Last, but
Yeah.
it's also true that when it comes to vulnerability-based trust, which is essentially what we're talking about here, that
Mhm.
leaders have to start first. And so
Mhm.
imagine what would happen if you walked into a room of direct reports and said, "Hey guys, I have been on a journey of realizing some things about me. And I wanted to come in and apologize for some emotional reactions I had recently about this event. And what I've realized happened is early on in my life, I was wounded, like we all were, and make a joke and then tell them, like, guys, one of the things that I really struggle with is being seen. And
Mm.
sometimes it shows up in the workplace like this and like this. And then if you're really brave, ask them this question: how was it like to be on the other side of me in that moment?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And then everyone in the room will be like, our boss, if it's an uncommon behavior, our boss is off the wagon, right? Like it, but if it's common behavior, if it's a normal part of your culture already, then you can invite them. Hey guys,
Yeah.
I want to invite you into this journey with me. I want us to be a team that can share the hard parts. I would love for you to take a look at what your wounding might be, and let's take a look at what your gifting is, and let's take a look at what emotionally spikes you, and let's just have some dialogue around it, not to fix it because we're not going to fix it, but so that we can all hold it together and understand that, like, we see each other.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. I think that it's so uncommon and so uncomfortable for leaders because I think some leaders, again, without that, if they're insecure about anything, then exposing that wound just
Mhm.
seems like I'm standing in front of the people while the emperor has no clothes. It's like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, you feel that. And you also, I think, as a leader, can feel a bit of fear. Like, if I put this out there, is anybody going to turn around and use this against me? So it takes a lot. I love the word you said, bravery. I think it takes a lot of bravery and courage to have that vulnerability to open that up. But again, to your point, if you can do that and open it up with your team, you're giving them permission to say that, and they can't really say anything to it takes away their ability to say anything to you when you ask them, "Hey, so for you, then you've already they can't say, "Well, I mean, I'm not telling you that." Like, "Well, I mean, I did. I told you I'm not asking you to do anything that I haven't done first. I'm not asking you to go anywhere where I haven't gone." And so I think that's really good advice, and that's
And
really
if you
good.
really want to back this up a little bit too, like if your culture doesn't promote this months before you actually do the exercise, people are going to have a hard time making that transition. If they
Mm,
don't feel safe in the culture, then they're not going to feel safe to share emotionally. So
right.
if your culture is integrity and grit and vulnerability, you know what, depending on what your culture is, you better figure
Mhm.
out a way to integrate that into the environment long before you ever ask them to share the deepest parts of who they are.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because if you
100%,
don't create a safe
100%.
environment, nobody's going to share anything. They're all going to give you lip service. Now, here's the other thing. If you do create like this idea of the culture and you begin to list out the values, then what will happen is the people that don't fit will self-select out.
Yes, absolutely.
And then they've just done a lot of your hard work for you.
Exactly. They're gonna get uncomfortable. Like,
It's a
"This ain't
gift.
for me."
It's a gift. There are companies that I work with all the time that it's like, hey, I'll come in and I'll be like, hey, you want me to take you guys down this path? And they're like, yes. And we'll start working down the path. And the next thing somebody's gone. And
That's
they
so
just don't
true.
wanna do it. They just don't wanna do the work, and that's fine. I'm not making anybody do the work, but you just need to know if we're building a culture that's based around vulnerability-based trust and somebody doesn't wanna be vulnerable, they're either gonna leave, or they're gonna be a cancer, and either way,
Yeah.
they gotta go.
It's so true, and I'll say this, there was a company we've worked with for years, and we do their leadership summits, and the interesting thing was one year they invited a person who I actually knew because I'd met him in one of their offices and was totally a toxic guy. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I would have recommended that company fire him years earlier. Like, I just he was a drag, as big as the word drag could be. He was drag, um, and he was just so not in alignment with the culture. Well, then they invite him to the leadership summit. I'm like, guys, are you sure you want to do this? Because like, I mean, this guy is not bought in, and you're bringing him into the kind of the inner circle of the top 60 leaders in your company. Are you sure you want to? Yeah, no, he's gonna really, that's gonna help him out. Da, 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 da. Well, he is done. And the day after the leadership summit, he turned in his resignation.
Yeah.
He just said, look, if this is what you guys are about, like I've been hearing it for a long time, but like I don't think he really believed it. And then he got in the room with everybody and he saw how bought in and in alignment everybody was and what they believed and how they were going to move on that the next year, and was like, I don't want it. And I was like, if we could do that, there's about 3 or 4 other people. You need to bring them next year because we'll get them off the boat, man. Let's go. But to your point, it's like when you create a culture that's really strong and very much in alignment, then anybody that doesn't fit that mold, or they're just going to self-eject because they can't handle it.
One of the stickies that I use all the time is that common language creates common movement.
Yeah.
And so we've got to create a common language around the EQ parts of the work. No matter if you're selling widgets or you're a coach working with Fortune 500 companies, right? Create a common language. That's one of the things that, EOS or scaling up, they all bring a language with them that then everybody begins to use that changes kind of the culture of the organization. And you've got to decide, are there extra parts to this that you want to make sure that you incorporate in order to make sure that you're thriving as a company?
I love it. All right. This has been the best conversation, by the way. This is, man, I
Dude,
love it. I love it.
I
love it.
You're good at what you do.
Everything.
You're good at what you do.
This has been great. You're even better, dude. You're like 400 episodes in. Are you kidding me?
There's no better or worse. I just got a lot more reps. That's it.
Yeah.
I just got a lot more reps.
Well, I think it's awesome, and I enjoy being on your show too. And so I want to tell people how they can find more information out about Tony and his book and his show and all that. How do people connect with you?
I often joke that I'm embarrassingly easy to find, and you could go to wisdominthewoundbook.com, and there's pre-orders there. We're giving away the introduction and the foreword right now if you sign up for an email list. There's also information about the Follow to Lead podcast and the Follow to Lead coaching. And so I'm also really been humbled and honored over the last couple of months to do some corporate speaking events. So if your organization is looking for someone who can come in and deliver, I give a keynote called Burn the Ships. And it's all about looking in the mirror and not going back. And I love the opportunity to give it. So wisdominthewoundbook.com. I'm on Instagram at TWMilt, TWMILT.
All right. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. So everybody, if you're driving, don't worry. You can check it out when you get where you're going. And one last question we always ask our guest is, who would you like to hear as a guest on The Last 10%?
Listen, I have been reading Main Street Millionaire by Cody Sanchez.
Nice.
Fiercely. And her contrarian community that she's building. Some of that stuff is just so powerful. So listen, I think Cody's the real deal. So you should try to get her because she's not responding to any of my messages.
She is definitely a country and she's definitely a force. And man, I see her stuff all over LinkedIn. And so, yes, that is awesome. We'll definitely have to reach out to Cody. And if we do get in touch with her, I'll say, listen, why are you talking to me? You need to be talking to Tony. That's what we're going to tell her.
We could record it with her together if you want.
Do a double show.
You'll get her. We'll do a double show. We'll release it on both feeds. We can go back and forth and ask questions. It would be fun. Or even better, if you get Cody to come, we should just do a live event and bring both of our communities together.
Ooh, I love it. Ooh, a live event. You know what? You might be onto something there.
Think Move Thrive Conference.
Yeah.
Presented by Follow to Lead. Let's go.
You heard it. You heard it here first on The Last 10%. There's some ideation going on. It could be something dangerous. Well, man, Tony, thank you so much for being on the show today. I just appreciate you and your wisdom. I think the leaders have had a lot of lessons that they can. There's so many takeaways. I got my notes here. I've been scribbling down that you've been talking. It's just so good. So good. So thank you for being on the show, sharing all your wisdom with our listeners. Good luck on the book launch and book tour. And we just wish you the best. And we'll have to have you back on when we get Cody on for a live session.
I love it. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you and your community so much. I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us today on The Last 10%. We hope you found today's content engaging and encouraging. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to hear the latest episodes. And help us out by rating and reviewing us so others will join our community. We release new episodes every other Tuesday. This podcast can be found globally in any podcasting app, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon. Subscribe today. Plus, visit our website, join our email list, and discover resources and info for your business and team at thinkmovethrive.com. Thanks again for listening to The Last 10%.